All right. Well, hello, everybody who is here, and welcome to our CCA alumni panel of how did I get my job? Because it's never easy to get a job. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you guys have to do to kind of jump through that, and all the applications and interviews and resumes and portfolios and stuff like that. So we have a few of our alumni here who are here to talk to you guys, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have them go around, introduce themselves, and tell us a little bit about themselves. And we'll start with Megan since she's unmuted right now.
Hey, hi, I'm Megan Livy. So I studied photography and graphic design at CCA as part of the individualized major. And I'm currently working at Wayfair in their 3D imagery department. So they're based in Boston, and I'm working remotely in New Hampshire at my parents' house right now. So yeah.
Cool. All right, let's pass the baton over to Emily.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily. I am in my senior year of college at California College of the Arts, like everyone else. And I'm having an internship right now for Hasbro as a toy design and packaging engineer. Yeah, pass it over to Coop.
And last but certainly not least, we have Cooper.
Hey, what's up? It's Cooper. I also go by Super Cooper. I work as I graduated earlier this year in the spring. So I just freshly graduated, and I have 3 jobs at the moment. I have I'm actually at one of my jobs right now, at the Japanese American National Museum as a sales associate, and I also work at the Van Gogh immersive Los Angeles exhibit as a sales associate. But I also do freelance illustration on the side, and I've gotten a few jobs that way. So busy. It's crazy.
Cool. All right, we'll get started. And Emily, don't worry, we can't see your ninja cat in the background trying to open the door. So let's start with our first question. Cooper, since you were the last one speaking, could you talk to us a little bit about how do you feel your program kind of prepared you for the positions that you're in, since you're doing multiple things?
Well, that's a good question. I think definitely a lot of it has to do with time management and planning. When you had projects in illustration, you kind of had to deal with figuring out when to kind of start the sketching phase, and then the deadline is within this amount of time. So when it came to applying for jobs, and even with freelance stuff too, a lot of that discipline translated. But when it came to applying for jobs that necessarily didn't have to do with that, it was still, the process of searching for the jobs, like figuring out what would be right for me right now. It's still a process where you have to really plan things out and break it into chunks instead of, plopping it out in one big drop. I had to, apply for a set amount of jobs per day. I had to think about jobs that were right for me. And I think that definitely the process of, even if it was illustration and some of the jobs I've gotten didn't really have to do with that, it was still the process of breaking things down and doing things step by step and thinking about when I would need a job by, and all of that was really important.
Great. All right, Emily, what are your thoughts?
Well, for me, applying for the job process, for me, I'm very similar to Cooper. I was always the student that was always finished first. When I was assigned something, I'm the opposite of procrastinator. I do it immediately, and I started immediately. And that's how it went for the application process. I didn't really focus too much on specifics, like what am I applying for, what I want to do, because when you're just starting everything, no one's going to hire you because, she's probably, it could, I don't mean it like that. I just mean it's, you're starting an internship for experience, and that's the important part. So just applying to whatever you can find that has even a little bit of correlation towards what you want to do will eventually get you there. So for me, I was applying to anything that related to the position my dream position was. And that really kind of goes back to how I worked with at school. If I wanted to do something, I started with something similar to that. And eventually it would get me there.
Great. All right. Megan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, also kind of similar to both of the previous responses. So I mean, I feel like a lot of the courses at CCA really taught me like technical skills and like really just how to learn. I didn't realize how big of a deal that was until I started this job, and like just learning how to manage deadlines and time management. They've been like probably the most important skills, honestly, like that apply for any job that you're going for. And I also started applying, like, I would say I started like going to the career center probably like 4 months before graduating or so. Like as soon as the semester started, I was there every week. So I feel like just thinking about it for so long just allow the application process to go a lot more smoothly, because then I could just apply for anything that related, even adjacently to what I was majoring in and what I wanted to actually do. So yeah, I totally agree with that approach. Like just go for anything, and then like the position that you end up with might not be what you initially thought, but it could be like the right one for that time of your life, and it could lead to like just great opportunities from there.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point. A lot of times students kind of get in their head like the first job is this is where I'm going to be for the rest of my life. And you might be there for a year or two, but it's not your last job. It's a growing, like your career is like a series of stairs, and so they're really kind of short and steep as you go, and then they get longer as you guys get in your career. So don't get bogged down if you're someplace that you're not totally jazzed about in the beginning. To continue to pick on Megan real quick, our next question, what sort of career-related things that you now know do you wish that you knew sooner?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like a lot of the skills that I learned were really going to the Career Center like during my last semester at CCA. So like resume building and like interview prep was super important, especially remotely. That's like completely different than in person. So just being able to prep for that was like something that I didn't expect when I was thinking about post-grad jobs. So I would say I was able to learn all those by going to the Career Center, and some of my core classes did teach those skills, but it wasn't on the level that I needed to actually like be able to have my portfolio and resume to the standard that I wanted for graduating. So yeah, I would say definitely use like all the resources you can on campus, and like combine the Career Center with like advice from professors and your actual like class material as well, because just the combination of all that will be plenty of information.
Yeah, you guys are going to get like a ton of feedback from us, your teachers, your friends, your mom and dad, and it's just kind of like synthesizing it down into what you feel works for you guys. Cooper, what sort of things do you know now that you wish you knew sooner?
Well, first, I agree with Megan, and I was going to say that, like, when you're in school versus when you graduated, they are two very different things. Like, in school, people tell you their ideas of what they did when they graduated, or what you're going to do, and how you're going to apply for things. And once you graduate, some things are going to come up that you had no idea were going to come up, or you just get into a completely different mindset that you didn't even know you would have. I mean, like, when you're in college, you go through the formula of working towards an assignment, working towards a specific process. And then when you do jobs outside of class, and when you start applying for jobs outside of class, you kind of get put into a different headspace. I mean, it's different for everybody, but for me personally, it was tough for me to adjust to it first, because It was different people. It was people that I didn't necessarily know. So something that I wish that I knew, when I was, now that I know this stuff, but stuff that I wish I knew before was, it's going to be very different, and there's going to be a lot of growing pains. And I agree with both Josh and Megan when it comes to, the job is just a stepping stone, and you will always be searching for jobs. Right now, I'm actually looking for jobs. I'm gonna move on to something else pretty soon. So yeah, I wish that I knew that, you don't have to stay somewhere. You can always move around, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. And Emily, since you have a slightly different perspective, since you're still in school learning the things that you can find out by the time you get out, what are some things that you wish that you knew sooner for where you're at right now, though?
Take pictures of everything. Oh my gosh, that's something I am so sad I didn't do. Like, there are things that I like somehow randomly remembered. Oh my God, I remember I made that. There's no proof, it's gone, destroyed in the middle of the trash. Take pictures of every single thing and try to take good pictures. So even if you can't take bad pictures, take whatever you can. That was so important, because recruiters don't care about the final product. They care about the process and how you got there. If you can make a pretty controller, a gaming controller, awesome. But if you can show them how you got there and your thinking and your process, that's what they care about. They want to see, okay, you're going to be working as a team with a bunch of other workers from different majors and different career groups. And how are you going to work with them? They're not going to know that just by seeing how well you can polish something. They want to see your dirty work too. So that's something super important that I wish I knew when I was starting school, is documentation. And yeah, kind of my perspective of working and going to school. I don't know if it's just because a lot of people say, oh, you're going to miss school. School is amazing. It is. It's really good. But I work in the mornings. I work 7 to 4, and then I have class from 5 to 10. And I love my job. School is such a chore now, because it's like, I don't care about doing this. I'm actually doing what I love, and I get to design for what I actually care about. I don't want to design a faucet. I don't want to. So, and I'm very thankful I kind of got to this point. I immediately kind of started a career that I really enjoy and I love. But no, that was definitely documentation and taking pictures. Do it. Just do it.
I'm actually glad that you mentioned a lot of those things, because we always tell you guys, definitely keep good progress photos. It's hard to reverse engineer that stuff. And then again, like, no matter what job you're in, there's always team capacity to it. So think how you collaborated with others, so that way you can talk about it in an interview and things like that. And I do hope that your internship is a conversion to hire once you get done, because I'm sure that'll be a huge weight off of your shoulders. But going to our next question, and we're going to start with Cooper. So this is a 3-pronged question. And if you need me to repeat, it's totally cool. So the first part is, what was your job/internship search like? How many places did you apply to? Because, it's very rare that you apply to one and you get that one. And then roughly, like, timeline wise, how long do you feel like it took? Because sometimes students don't realize it can take months. It can take weeks sometimes.
Well, it's interesting. I think that I definitely, I think that my process of applying for jobs was a little bit complicated. Not in actually applying for them, but like the way that I got one of them. So I didn't really stick to one website. I didn't really just stick to LinkedIn. I also looked on Handshake. I looked at ZipRecruiter. I looked at, I can't really think of many, website names off the top of my head, but I didn't really stick to one. I just looked up things that, I knew that I could apply for and I could get into, things that had to do with illustration, like retail jobs that had to do with, toys and, museum work, because I have had experience in, curatorial practice and gallery stuff. So that was something that I definitely looked out for. And I would say that I was searching for a couple of months. Thankfully, like I'm very grateful for, that somebody was willing to hire me quickly. Two two of them were willing to hire me quickly. I got a lot of interviews. And something that like I don't know a lot of people talk about is if you really make yourself known early on, and when you really put yourself into a scene, that's really going to be important to those people years down the line. Something that I applied for was the Japanese American National Museum, which I'm working in right now. It's kind of funny, but the person there saw my application and remembered me from years ago, because they recognized the gallery that I was working for, and was like, "Oh, I know that curator." So I think that's something really important. Is if you have worked for someone in the past, think about connections. Think about who like related galleries who might know the stuff that you've done for other people, because they're going to prefer you to other candidates. And I kind of just I kind of had a cheat code like that. So my process was a little bit different than most people, and I had that privilege of knowing somebody. So it didn't really take long for me, but I'm still looking around for jobs, and it never really ends. Yeah, my process was very weird.
Well, that's networking is a huge part of any job search. So you are getting some very valuable experience with that. Megan, how about yourself?
Yeah, so mine is also pretty complicated and long. So basically, I started applying, I want to say it was a month before graduation. So it would have been April of 2021. So basically, I applied for 70 jobs total. I heard back no from 10, yes from 1, which is the job I have now. And then I didn't get a response from 59 of them. And that, like, I was not prepared for that number, because I basically only applied for jobs that I was qualified for, like were related to the field, all that stuff. So I feel like that's something to definitely keep in mind. Like, you can apply for so many and you just need the one job. Like, it's, and you won't hear back from a lot of places, and it's nothing personal. A lot of companies just don't have time, and it would be ideal if they did, just so you could like have some closure with it and not be thinking about the job and wondering if you got it. But yeah, so basically, because of COVID, I didn't have any like internship before graduating. And also I was only at CCA during my senior year, because the school I went to before was SFAI, and they closed at the beginning of COVID. So it's kind of like a weird like process there, definitely. So I was really hoping to have an internship like junior year of college, but I never got that opportunity, unfortunately, but it still worked out fine. It's like, obviously internships are really great, but it didn't cause me any problems that I didn't have internships. I had plenty of like on-campus jobs and different experience like that throughout college, so that was really important. But having like a proper internship wasn't necessarily like a deal breaker for the job. So yeah, so basically, when I started applying for jobs, I did something super similar to Cooper, where I basically had a set number that I had to do each day. It was like, I think it was like 5 to begin with, and then some days I would just spend like the whole day on it, and like I would work on it during classes because I just wanted to work on that, and like I just didn't want to focus on anything else at the time. So basically, but yeah, at some point I got to 70 jobs, and then I kind of like took a step back and just like stopped for a little bit because I was kind of burnt out from that. So the job that I did hear back from was Wayfair, and so this was around graduation. I'm pretty sure it was like the week after graduation. I don't totally remember, but anyway, so I applied, and on LinkedIn, I did all my job searching through LinkedIn. I applied and I heard back from them 2 hours later, which was crazy. I was like not expecting that at all. So basically they got back to me, they set up my first interview. My first interview was like a week later. I had that, it went really well. And they were like, we'll get back to you within a week. And then 2 weeks passed. I was like, well, guess I didn't get it. Like, I'll just move on to something else. And then I followed up just saying like, oh, I saw that you guys posted this other job. Should I apply for this job or should I wait for the one that I interviewed for last week? And then they were like, oh, we want to schedule your second interview. So like, I kind of just did that sneaky like follow up, like, oh, I saw that you had this other job. And then like, just to kind of be like, did you forget? Because they often get like very busy and stuff. So it can take a little bit to hear back. And even if they give you an estimated timeline, it might not be accurate. So that was definitely the most stressful part, was like all of the in-between time. So then I had my second interview about a week or two later. That went really well again. And then I didn't hear back for another 2 weeks. So it was just like, it was a 2-month-long process. And it was just really, it was stressful and depressing because I didn't have the energy or motivation to apply for other jobs during that time because I just wanted that one because I'd been spending all my energy on applying for that and like interview prep and all that stuff. So I kind of just did nothing for 2 months, and it was really necessary for me personally. It was like helpful to kind of like have that break between college and work, but it was not restful. It was like half restful, half just stressed out because you're like, what am I gonna do next? Like, I'm just waiting now. So basically, when I did hear back after the second interview, I heard back from like the director of the imagery department. Sorry, this is a very long story, but there are a lot of details. So I heard back from the director of the imagery department, and she was like, so your original role, it's actually evolved into a more senior position. So we're going to hire from within for that role. But we have this new job that we're basically creating for you to be in the imagery department with us because we want you to work here. So that was really like flattering, and like I'm very happy about that because then I was able to still work there even though I didn't get the first job that I wanted. So then they basically, I was like, yes, I'm interested in that. And then I went through another interview process. It was like 4 interviews total. And then I started like 3 weeks later or something like that. So I started like in July. So I've been there 3 months now. But they actually hired me as contract. So I'm a full-time contract worker. So that's like another thing too. It's like some companies will do salaried, some will do contracts, some will give you the option. But yeah, so I think that's it. Yeah, so I've been there 3 months. So I'm like officially like onboarded now. And yeah, it's been crazy.
So Megan's story is crazy. Before we jump to Emily, that is both typical and very untypical. Like the part where she talked about how they reached out to her on LinkedIn like that virtually never happens. And when it does, it really freaks you out because you're like, is this a scam? Because who
Yeah, I thought it was a
Ponzi
scam,
that fast?
definitely. Yeah.
But as Cooper and both Megan said, like a lot of, if they know you, they're willing to kind of take a chance on you. And so like through like the interviews that Megan had, they wanted to kind of, you know, bring her into a different role. But let's see, Emily, what was your experience like?
So for me, it was the pressure of having to have an internship for the semester of your junior year to senior year. And that freaked me out. So I didn't care what I got or what I did. I just need an internship. So I started like every night before bed. I remember I'd go on LinkedIn and just apply to the easy ones. If I could apply, like the ones that said easy, I just applied on my phone. And I had like all the files saved onto my iCloud, so I can just attach my portfolio, my website links, super easy things. And then and when I could, I would apply to the more intricate ones. I would ask you questions and give a quick summary. But, you know, I was just, I can't even tell you how many I applied for, but it wasn't a little, it was probably a lot. And I think until I got to a point where it was like, well, this is like, I remember thinking like, there are probably so many people, not just from CCA, but from a lot of art schools in this area. They're doing the exact same thing, going on LinkedIn, Handshake, to just applying. So I was like, so I remember I began just the process of, okay, what do I want to do? Okay, I was so intrigued with like toy design. So I just started going to a bunch of like toy companies and calling them, sending emails saying, hey, like, and you know, people tell you, don't say I need a job, because they don't like that. You have to say, hey, I'm super interested in what you do. I'm doing this. I would love to get a chance to talk to you and learn more about what you do. So maybe I could look into something like this for my future career. And, you know, people like that. And I remember doing that for a lot too. And the Kiwi Toe, I was super intrigued by them. Green Toys, I almost got an internship for them, but they kind of closed off because of COVID. And then I remember getting an email from Hasbro saying, hey, we looked over your application, your portfolio, and we're super interested. Would you have any time to talk? And I remember like responding immediately, like, yes, delete. Let me make this sound more professional. But and you know, that was kind of a big step forward. And then they set up an interview with me. And this interview, I think what I did a good job of, you know, I stayed calm, conversational, professional, but also nice. I think when we're doing presentations a lot at school and we're told to rehearse, memorize, we sound very robotic. And you need to remember that people, well, it depends what you're striving to work for, but if you're going to be in a group setting where there's a lot of teamwork, no one's going to want to work with a robot. So, you know, and that's not you. We know that when you're being robotic, it's because you're nervous, they're scared and trying to be perfect. No one's perfect. No one's going to be perfect. So and then so I had this interview, and then just maybe a week later, I got a call saying like, hey, you want to work for us? We really like you. And you know what, I don't know how true this is, but they told me that like after my interview, they just canceled all the other interviews because they really liked me. So, you know, making a good impression, but not just because of skills and how good you do what you want to do. It's about, you know, what kind of person you are and how you're going to work with other people. Well, that was really important in my case. And then, you know, before I knew it, I got a job, and now I've been at Hasbro for almost 4 months. But it's just really nice. And, you know, for me, it was a really amazing experience. Even though it was online, I love working with other people. So, yeah.
Awesome. So before we go to our next question, for those of you guys who just have been tuning in as we've been going on, at the beginning, this is conversational. So if you guys have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll get our panel to address those for you guys. But so while we wait for some of those to trickle in, our next question is simple in terms of what the question is, but maybe the answer is not as simple. Emily, we'll stick to you. What do you feel was the most challenging part of your search, though?
The most challenging part, I think, staying hopeful and not giving up. Like, that's the basics. You know, there are times where just like, this is impossible. I'm not gonna do this. But I think the most challenging part, I think, oh gosh, you're right, it's not an easy question. You know, it's the whole process is very stressful and scary, you know, but I think it's also trying to stand out. I think that's it. It was just because, how do I answer this? How do I turn this application into something that will stand out? And, you know, you're using just words. You don't have your personality. You don't have, maybe your work can help, but it's all about your words. And how to make your portfolio stand out just enough so they give it just another 5 seconds to look it over. I think that was it. And how do I not just say, I'm really good, choose me? It's like, how do I make this different from all the other people that are applying to the exact same position?
Cooper, what do you feel was the most challenging part for you?
The most challenging part, hands down, was the resume. It was definitely the resume and the cover letter. I I mean, you remember when, I first was talking to you and I showed you what my resume looked like. I'll never forget how you, like right off the bat, you were like, yeah, this is like way too long. So, part of it, like the reason why it was so hard for me was like, I thought that I needed to prove myself in front of these jobs. And I put everything in the resume. Like I put everything I'd ever done. And you do not do that. You really have to pick, and you really have to choose, and you have to really think about what you're applying for, and that can take a lot of time, especially when they ask for a cover letter. You do have to write every single one. You don't have to write a whole essay or anything. You can always don't use a template. Do not use a template, but you can use similar keywords for jobs that are similar, similar points, and then find a way to cater that to the job in a way that doesn't look like it's robotic. But that's hard, and that's it is easier said than done, especially with how much time it takes. And you also need software like InDesign, because if you make a cover letter or resume with just Word, it's gonna look like a Word resume, and it's not gonna make much of an impression. So, part of that was also like giving the resume and the cover letter a bit of that, bit of salt and pepper, so it isn't just like a bread. It's a piece of bread with butter on it and with a little bit of arugula. And some employers want that, but it does take time, and really choosing what you want to put on there, because you're like, I really want this job. I really want, I want to get hired because so many of these, these jobs sound so interesting to me. But you really have to pick, and you really have to choose, and you have to be selective, and that's tough. That is hands down the hardest thing about applying.
Megan, before you answer, I've never heard someone describe a resume and a cover letter as a piece of bread with butter and arugula on it. That's a first. I'm going to remember that because that was really interesting. But Megan, what was the most challenging part for you?
Yeah, I would say like the amount of time that it took to apply for jobs. I mean, the resume, obviously, like we spent so long on my resume, like months, and that was like, but that felt less painful because it was spread out over like a long period of time. But then the cover letters, I just remember despising writing cover letters, and like I didn't use templates, but like once I had like I kind of like made my own for like photography jobs, specifically like fashion photography, then like jewelry photography, and I kind of like broke it down like that. So I kind of had my own versions of templates like that. And but yeah, cover letters were not fun, but you just have to do them. It's just like part of the process. And yeah, and I would say like it just like start early if you can. Like yeah, like I started months ahead of graduation, and that allowed me to like focus on that along with classes and not be too overwhelmed. And like if I couldn't work on it one week, it's not the end of the world. It's not like I have to apply right away. And I mean, it's also like you don't have to apply before graduating. You don't have to apply the second that you graduate. Like if you want to wait or like take a little bit of time off, like just to rest, like that's also totally fine. Or just like do a job that's like just fun that doesn't relate to what you're studying. For me, I just wanted to like have that job right away. So it kind of just depends like what you're looking for in that sense. So like, because it is a lot to work on all that stuff and be in classes during your senior year, it's just like a lot of time for sure. And I mean, aside from all that, I would say like just the mentality of applying for jobs, it can get very depressing at times for sure. It's hard to stay hopeful. I would say like, I mean, it works out. Like it's just, it doesn't seem like it will at times, and it does if you're putting your heart into what you're doing and you're really studying and like improving on your skills and being personable during interviews and following up with people and like just really putting your all into it, like it's going to work out. It just might not feel like it at every moment necessarily.
All right. So for our next question, I feel like for this one, Megan, you and Cooper might have a similar approach, but since Emily, you're still in school, you have to kind of flip your brain around a little bit. So I'm really curious to see what you're going to say about this. And I'll let you go first. So was it challenging as you were graduating and starting to work to switch your mindset from school to career? So I know, Emily, you're having to do like career into school, but I wonder what you guys are going to say afterwards. So Emily, what is it challenging for you to do that?
Yes and no. I think what was so different between my favorite difference between job and school was, for me, is the set hours. You get to work I get to work from 7 to 4, and then I'm done. I can take a breath. I can have a mental day. I did what I needed to do, and I don't have to look back at it until the next day, even if I love what I'm doing. And then, from 4 to, I can hang out with my friends. I can be with my family. I can have a day to myself, and I don't have to worry about it until 7 a.m. the next day. And that's something I think I love the most. School is different. You're constantly worrying about making, continuing to do your project, your deadlines, making it better. Is it good enough? Is it not? Reaching out for help. You don't know if you're on the right track. And it's a constant worry 24/7. Am I going to get the job? Am I going to be able, is my portfolio good enough? Okay, I'm done with this project. What should I be doing now? And I think that's, that very stressful environment is really nice to kind of be able to step away from. And I think the biggest kind of difficulty between switching is, priorities. You do have a task you do need to complete for job, and then you're like, oh shoot, but I have to do that paper for school. And I think kind of lining up your priorities now for 2 completely different environments is also a huge difficulty. Well, for me, yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
Megan, how about yourself? What were some of the challenges adapting from school mindset to career mindset?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like it's been pretty smooth, and I agree with a lot of the things that Emily was saying, how, for me, having a 9-to-5 job has been way less stressful than school has ever been. I work really hard 9 to 5, and then I'm done. And it's so weird. I'm not used to it still. And it's the weirdest thing is having weekends off. And that's not the case for every job, but just working 40 hours a week is way less than I was ever working in school. So that's super weird. And it feels like I'm on vacation sometimes. I'm like they're paying me, and I have days off. This is so weird. So I'm just I'm so thankful for that. And that's not the case for every job, but that was a nice adjustment for sure. And for the actual day-to-day of my job, it's actually kind of similar to school, because basically I work on 3 different brands. So those are kind of how classes would work. So they all have their own deadlines, and I get assigned certain things on certain days and they're due other days. So they basically have a similar timeline to how classes would be. It's just 3 brands instead of being in 5 classes. So I feel like I wasn't really expecting that, but it's been really smooth, I think, because of the nature of my specific job. But really just the craziness of college, I feel prepared me for the craziness of a job. Just being busy and motivating yourself and prioritizing tasks and all that stuff. It's definitely really, really similar. And I don't think I appreciated that knowledge that college gave me until having a job and oh, I can just manage my time so well. I didn't know that I could do this. And then it's oh, I learned that throughout college, having all those classes and all those projects. So yeah, it hasn't been a bad transition for me. And it's been like very positive, and I feel like I have a lot of freedom now, which is I was not prepared for that. It's very nice.
Cooper, how about yourself?
Honestly, it's been really tough. It's been very hard to balance, work with other things, and to adjust to a different way of working and honestly a different way of life. Because once you graduate, like when you're in school, you have all of this time to work on your art and to work on, I was an illustration major, and I would have all of this time to draw and all of this time to all of this time to work on my craft. And when when I graduated, I was kind of thrust into this weird point in my life where I didn't really have people telling me what to do. I had to go out on my own and really take the initiative and get a job myself. Oh, sorry, my phone vibrated. And it's hard in two different ways. Like it's hard in kind of adjusting to a different mindset, and it's also hard in regards to adjusting to a different schedule. So when you're in school, again, as I said before, you've dedicated all of this time, and you had all of this time to practice your drawing, to get stuff stuff that you wanted to do done. But you can't exactly, unless if unless if you you had all that money to begin with, you can't really live like that. So you have to pay for rent, you have to pay for food at some point, and it's going to take a little while. It takes steps to become a full-time artist. And right now, I really need to do retail jobs so that I can build up, and I can build up the funds so that I can save up, and so that I can get a better job down the line, live somewhere. And getting into the second part of why it's a little hard, the scheduling is very difficult. When you have two jobs on the side, that is not very practical at all. So I'm doing things to kind of fix that problem. I might transition into one job, and then also my illustration work, which I'm trying to build up towards. But man, let me tell you what I have to do for these two jobs. So I have to travel a lot. I have to take the bus. I don't have a car. I have to take the bus from my house, which is in Northridge, which is kind of in Woodland Hills, California, all the way to Hollywood. And that takes anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours one way there. So yeah, that cuts out a lot of time. I was talking to my mom about it, and it's called opportunity cost. And I feel like a lot of that, in college you had a lot, you couldn't really think about opportunity cost because, you didn't have to think about opportunity. Everything was there in front of you. You had those projects there. You didn't really have to worry about dividing your time, except for, deadlines for projects. But when you're thrust into, the real world outside of college, you do have to think about how much time you're spending, going, working at, a retail job, and then also going back and forth. Also what you're doing when you get home. I find that I get kind of tired when I get home, when I have, when I work retail, so I don't really work on art as much. So I really had to cut my hours down in order to get some time to work on freelance and to work on my personal brand and getting, illustration work done. And I don't know if, anybody here is an illustrator or works in fine art, but, it takes a lot of time to draw stuff, and really dividing that time is really hard. So it's tough, but I think we can all get through it, and I'm confident that I'll be able to get through this too. And nothing's permanent. I might be traveling a lot now, but I'm just going to keep applying and see what happens. And yeah, hope that made sense.
Awesome. All right, so we're gonna circle back into the job hunting aspect of this for the next question. And as we kind of start to wind down a little bit here in about 10 minutes, if you guys have questions, you can drop them in the chat. But this is one that everybody at every stage of your career is going to go through. How did you guys handle rejection, which is inevitable to everybody, when during the application and or the interview process? And let's start with Megan, since you told us you did 70 jobs, and that is not uncommon. That is a very average thing for you guys to keep in mind when you do this.
The question, sorry, I was reading the chat message. The question was did you have any idea of what you wanted to do? Was that one?
Oh, no. So this question is, how did you handle rejection during the or the interview process?
Gotcha.
We'll jump to Angela's question in a second.
Cool. So, I mean, when I first started, yes, I got about like 10 like no's from applications. So when I first started getting those, it's definitely disheartening, especially because it would just happen like at random points in the day. Like I'd be in class, I would get an email like, oh, cool, interview, or like maybe I get an interview. And I'd be like, we're going another way. I'm like, oh, okay. Like it's kind of just like a little bummer in the day, even if you do apply for a lot of jobs. I mean, I feel like even though it would definitely get me down whenever I saw one of those emails, it would motivate me to just keep applying for more and just kind of hope that it would work out. I don't know how much like handling rejection there was necessarily. I was kind of just like, I hope it works out. Like, I mean, I'm bound to get no's from some places. I think so when I first interviewed for the Wayfair job and they were like, oh, we'll get back to you in a week. And then it was like 2 weeks later. That's the kind of time when I did feel the rejection, even though they didn't actually say no. It just was taking a while. So I kind of assumed I didn't get it. So that was definitely more rough because I was really, really hopeful for the job. And I like thought that the interview went so well and all that kind of thing. So I feel like if I didn't get that, then there would have been like a lot more rejection to kind of deal with and like to work to have like as a starting point to apply for more jobs after. But yeah, so I guess I would just say like just use it to motivate you to keep applying. And don't be too hard on yourself because it's never personal. And like for a lot of jobs, there are like tons and tons of people who are really qualified, and there are reasons for hiring a certain person you might not know. Like it could just be like, oh, they happen to know somebody at the company, or just, there are other reasons always where it's like they're just looking for a specific skill set and there's something really specific on somebody's resume or whatever. So yeah, it's never personal, and the right company for you will appear if you're like working hard to apply for stuff.
Cooper, what was your perspective?
The thing that I do to brace myself for that is I expect every single application to say no. I pretty much just expect it. And I know that that's like super depressing, but like I mean, you know, you have to apply for a lot of jobs, and from what I've heard through a lot of people, you do hear a lot of no's, and for some of them it really was discouraging. Like there was I remember there was an illustration job that was being offered by Discord, and I was like, oh man, that one would be so cool if I could get that one. You know, I sent it to them. I sent them my portfolio link, and I heard back like a week later that they were looking at other applicants, and that they would consider me for a different job if they ever had one. And it was a bit of a bummer to me, but you know, if you brace yourself for hearing back no, you know, someday that they're gonna say yes. And maybe you'll find another job down the line. You know, it takes a while to get the job that you want. And you know, right now I have 2 retail jobs, and you know, I didn't really have those in mind, but you know, it takes steps, and it's a build up to that point. And if you feel disappointed that, you know, your dream job says no now, they might say yes in the future. And you know, from what I've heard through several people, some jobs really do hold onto portfolios, especially when it comes to freelance and especially when it comes to promos. So like when you send out your portfolio to like an email blast, there are art directors who hold on to them. They won't just throw them out as much as some people will like to tell you that, but you know, especially in the digital era, it's a lot easier to keep track of the artists that you like, and you know, art directors have definitely used the internet and email to, you know, star, you know, portfolios and things like that. So just know that if you hear you know, a lot of no's right away, that means that they don't need you right now. But maybe later on, when you've built up more repertoire and more experience, you're going to be a very important asset to them. So just keep that in mind.
Great take. Emily, how about yourself? I think you're on mute. Oh, we're not able to hear you right now. Okay. Well, as we await, let's jump into the chat really quick, just because we're coming to the end of time. The first question in there, Megan, if you want to go first, is there anyone that you turn to as a resource during the process of applying?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, the Career Center for sure, very helpful. And also like parents and friends and like anybody that I know in any even adjacent industry. Yeah, just kind of asking everybody for advice or like, oh, hey, just let people know I'm looking for a job. And if you hear of anything, then just let me know. So kind of just like let people know that you're looking for things. And then if they hear of something, then they'll probably let you know.
Really quick, Cooper, how about yourself? Was there anyone that you turned to?
I turn to you, Josh. I thank you. You know, I'm grateful for your help, and definitely do not sleep on the Career Center. They are there for you. Their job is to help you, and they will dedicate their time for you, and they'll walk you through the process of really, you know, having a really strong resume, making sure that you're good in interviews. I actually didn't really get to the interview part. I kind of had interviews on my own, but you know, making sure that you are your best in front of these applicants. And I don't think I think if I didn't ever ask you or the Career Center about that, I think I would be I think I don't know if I'd be hired right now. So yeah, definitely, like if you have any questions, definitely contact like Josh and the Career Center, because you know, they're definitely an incredibly valuable resource. Do not ignore them.
Well, thank you very kindly. Emily, so we got a twofer for you really quick. So how did you handle any kind of potential rejection? And then the follow-up question from the chat was if there was any resource that you turned to when you were applying.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. So how I handled rejection, similarly to Cooper, I just didn't expect anything out of any of my applicants. I was like, oh, well, I probably won't get it, but if I do, that'll be amazing. You know, so expect the worst, and so anything that comes out of that will be great. And also, I think every time I got any like rejection email, I would assume that it wasn't because they saw mine and they didn't like it. It was because they found someone before they got their eyes on mine. And that just helps me kind of stay motivated and hopeful, like, oh, dang, they just didn't get to mine. They got to one that was just as good right beforehand. You know, like hype yourself up. Say, like, I'm good. Ugh, they just didn't see how good mine was. I think that just really helps, you know, be comical about it. And what was the second question?
The second one was, is there anyone that you turn to as a resource during the applying
Oh,
process?
yeah, that's a great question. Okay, here's a little advice for everyone. Be nice to your teachers. Say good morning, keep your camera on during Zoom. I think a lot of my professors will really, oh no, I had a good relationship to a lot of them. I had one person that, one of my professors, he was my 3D CAD teacher. He reached out to me in the summer saying like, hey, I want to do this project. Do you want to join me on it? I was like, yeah, let's do it. I've had some professors that have asked me like, hey, I'm not going to be able to start class in time. Can you start it for me and just tell them to do this? I'm like, okay, of course, I got you. And because of that, John Moriello, he was one of my ID professors. He actually set up an interview for me. I had already gotten the job at Hasbro, but I told him I'd love for this person to meet with me and maybe he can give me some advice on my portfolio. I had another professor that also kind of was, he knew I got my job at Hasbro, and I've had some people reach out on his end saying like, hey, I'd love to meet with you and hopefully like this and that. And I've gotten a lot of connections just from my professors. So yeah, just a lot of people that work with your professors are probably going to need interns at one point, and knowing that they work with a bunch of kids who are looking for internships, they're going to reach out to them, and your professor is only going to recommend the people that they really want to recommend. So that's just a huge piece of advice. Be nice to your teachers.
Definitely be nice to your teachers, especially if you're looking for referrals. As we draw closer to the end, I do apologize if we go a moment or two over, but I want to get to Misha's question, and then there's one last question. So if you guys want to rapid fire this one, did you have to take time, this is Misha's question, did you have to take time to learn a skill that you needed for eligibility for your job that you did not learn in CCA? And if so, how was the process as you were looking for jobs at the same time? And we'll start with you, Emily.
Gosh, I need to read that one. Like the skills that I did not have from CCA and how I went about it.
Yeah, like if there was something from your program that you didn't learn, that you didn't know, but for your job at Hasbro that you needed.
Okay, I think a huge factor there is about teamwork. Because at CCA, it's you're working for your own portfolio, for yourself and no one else. It's just you. Okay, yes, you maybe a couple team projects, but it's really about individual work, and it's not like that. In my work field, it wasn't like that at all. You need to learn how to ask for help, how to work with others. A product isn't just, well, for me, a product isn't just about the design aspect, the graphic design, illustration, costing. How do you communicate with everyone else about that? That was so important for me. So that's definitely a skill I developed at work. And that was a huge question they asked me at my interview. And I told them, I didn't know how to answer it because I was like, I don't have a lot of experience with teamwork, but I told them I really want to because I love working with people and learning from other people. Yes.
All right, Megan, how about yourself?
I would say like nothing necessarily specific, except for like just going off of what the job posting was. They were like, oh, proficient in Excel. And I'm like, well, I know Excel like pretty well. Like I wouldn't say I'm like an expert or anything. So I kind of just like applied anyway. And I was like, it's probably fine. And it turns out we use Google Sheets anyway, which I'm like way better at. So it didn't even really matter in the end, for that specifically. But yeah, I mean, same thing with teamwork, like, because like I'm on a bunch of different brands, I'm communicating with the producers and the art directors and the stylists. So like just really, really improving my communication skills and just following up with people, making sure nobody's left in the dark. Like everybody wants more information versus less information, like for the most part. Like, yeah, just over communicate whenever possible. Even if you feel like you're being annoying or just repeating yourself, it's always a really good skill to have and like to improve upon, just so people know that you're like on top of it and making sure that everybody gets the job done.
Great. And Cooper, really quickly, what about yourself?
I agree. Like communication is absolutely important. I think that an aspect that we take for granted, but I think is also very important that I had to learn over time was speaking, like verbal communication, kind of messaging communication, making sure that you get across what you want to get across, and without sounding super overbearing. And a lot of that translates into verbal communication as well. I think that a good way to practice is just, hang out with people and to, practice talking with them and see how you hold up in a conversation with them. Because a lot of what you, like in interviews, you'll notice that, it's basically just a conversation. They'll ask you questions that have to do with the job, but that doesn't mean that you have to talk super rigidly. A lot of that is, just regular talking. And sometimes when you'll go into work, you'll have to have those conversations too. And that's how you get into contact with those people. And that's how you make connections, is leaving an impact and staying, really making sure that your words really ring with people. So really practice your verbal communication, making sure that you're as concise as possible, getting to the point, but also making sure that if one person wants you to be super detailed, or if someone else wants you to be super concise, make sure you know how to cater it to those people. Because it's difficult, and you don't really realize that it's difficult until you take on the job, and when you start applying. But definitely keep that in mind, the verbal aspect.
All right. So I do apologize, everybody. We went a few minutes over. We're going to pull this into the end. Last question, and you guys can make this as brief as you guys would like, if you feel that way. So out of everything that we've said, you guys now have the power of reflection. What sort of quick advice or pointer, in addition to everything we've said, would you give to these folks here as they start to begin their own search for jobs and internships? And let's start with you, Emily.
You guys are going to find a job. Don't worry about it. It's going to come. The right one, maybe not the perfect one, but a good enough one is going to come, and you're eventually going to work your way up to the perfect job. Don't think that you're not good enough, no matter who says it, or if anyone would dare to say that. You guys are all going to do amazing, and you're going to find a job. So don't worry about it. Don't stress. Just work hard, just like you guys do in school, and you'll get there.
Megan, how about yourself?
Yeah, same thing. Trust the process. I've been worried about getting this job out of college since I started college, or since I graduated from high school. It's such a scary, daunting idea, and I was worried about it for all of college, and it turned out fine. And a lot of that was because I was stressed about finding the job. I would work hard in my portfolio and be like, what do I want to do? But just trust the process. If you're working on what you love, and you're just putting the time in to dedicate yourself to that, you're going to get a job, and it's all going to be fine. Even though sometimes it won't feel like it will be fine.
All right, Cooper, to wrap everything up, no pressure, what's the great anecdote you're going to give people?
Well, when I went to college, I went for illustration, and as soon as I graduated, I got a job that didn't really tie into that as much. And if that happens with you too, that's okay. I think that it's important to recognize that you should never give up on what you love to practice and what you love to do, because you have to build up to that point. A lot of companies might not want to jump on a newcomer, or someone who doesn't really have much of a resume or a portfolio yet when it comes to work experience. And you have to start small, and just know that things are taken in steps. You can't exactly skip a step or anything. It takes time to do things, and I wish that there was much more I could crunch into that advice, but I would say that, as someone who is probably the least patient person on the planet, be patient when it comes to that. Patience is really the most important thing. It comes to applying for jobs in general, when it comes to applying for the jobs that you want. yeah, you know, it's going to happen someday. Just know that.
All right. Well, thank you very much, you guys. Megan and Emily are putting their contact info in the chat if you guys want to follow up with them. But thank you very much to all three of you guys. Cooper, thank you for taking time out of your day at work. And Emily, thank you for taking the time, and also for your ninja cat for appearing in the background at the start. Megan, thank you very much for joining us from the East Coast. It's greatly appreciated, and it's nice to see that you guys are all doing such amazing things, and I hope that you guys stay in touch with us.
Thank you so much for all your help.
Of course. All right. Well, you guys are free to return to the wilds of the internet, and always reach out if you guys have questions.